Welcome to the Left of Str8 Show, your one-stop destination for intriguing conversations with extraordinary individuals who are boldly navigating life outside the conventional norms. Our host, Scott Fullerton, is thrilled to embark on this journey of discovery with all of you. The Left of Str8 Show, we believe that every person's story is unique, and it's our mission to showcase the diversity of human experiences. We bring you the untold stories of fascinating people who identify as LGBT+ and allies, pushing boundaries, breaking stereotypes, and making a positive impact in our communities. On this show, we bring you a diverse lineup of inspiring guests, from activists to artists, and entrepreneurs to entertainers, and everything in between. We dive deep into their personal journeys, discovering the pivotal moment that has shaped their lives and careers. You can expect thought-provoking discussions on a wide range of topics, from LGBTQ rights, social justice to arts, culture, mental health, and more. Our guests are change makers who share their insights, challenges, and triumphs, igniting conversation that promotes empathy, understanding, and love. So whether you're part of the LGBTQ community or an ally looking to expand your knowledge and show your support, the Left of Str8 Show is for you. Together, we can build bridges of understanding and acceptance, celebrating the beauty of what makes us all unique. So sit back, grab a drink, and get ready for the show.
All right, everyone. Welcome back to the Left of Str8 Show. I hope you're having an incredible week. I'm your host, as always, Scott Fullerton, and I love having the chance to interview celebrities and personalities from the worlds of entertainment, foodies, books, music, and advocacy, all for our LGBTQ community and our fantastic straight allies. Today, I have the incredible opportunity to chat with a seasoned Pixar veteran. Bret Parker's in studio with me. You know, I love me some comics, animation, and superheroes, and her life has intersected just about all these. After seeing her and her wife's amazing animated short film, Pete, that premiered in the 2022 Tribeca Film Festival, it also went on to win accolades across the country and the world. I knew I had to have her on and talk all about her work and career. With an impressive 26 years plus at Pixar, she has been driving force behind the creation and animation of over 20 iconic films, including the Oscar-winning Finding Nemo and The Incredibles. Bret is not only an accomplished animator, but also a talented voice actress, contributing her skills to bring Pixar's magical worlds to life. We're going to delve into a remarkable career, and we'll explore the artistry and magic behind the scenes of some of your favorite animated films. So please welcome to the Left of Str8 Show for the very first time, Miss Bret Parker. Bret, how you doing?
I'm good. What an amazing intro, my goodness.
Well, you've had such an amazing career. I'm so excited that I hadn't seen your work before. I'm glad it was reached out to. It's going to be nominated, hopefully, for an Academy Award, knock wood. So I had to have you on because you're just the culmination of all my favorite things. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I always like to ask the first timers on the show two questions. The first, I kind of want to know, where did you grow up and what kind of a kid were you growing up?
I grew up in Kensington, Maryland, and so suburb of DC. And what kind of kid was I? Let's see. I feel like I played soccer as a kid, and then I was a dancer. I grew up dancing ballet. I wanted to do that for a minute, and but did not. And but that was sort of my passion growing up as a kid. And otherwise, I had my mom and my sister. It was just the three of us, and amazing grandparents right nearby, and that was kind of what my family looked like.
I love that. We're going to talk about your dance in just a minute here. But second question I like to ask everybody, you're a proud out member of our LGBTQ community. When did you first come out to yourself, and when do you think you maybe first found your LGBTQ tribe?
Well, that is an interesting question. And it's funny how I feel like in making Pete, both my wife, Pete, and I have been delving more into questions just even about when we found our own identity. And I have to say, I didn't come out officially till later. I was in my 30s actually, but I feel like it was something with my identity. I have Bret is my chosen name. I have a dead name. Um, and that process started when I was 8. So I feel like there was a looking for and trying to find my identity from the time I was a kid. And it was a long path.
I can understand that. Well, I love hearing the story about it. Let's talk about that dance background. You went to Oberlin for dance right here in Ohio, where I'm out of. Talk about that. What kind of experience did you have there, and what was that like to learn from all those different? There's some a great dance program there, right?
Yeah, it was a fantastic program. Oberlin was amazing. It was such a good fit for me. It was a time of like exploration and learning. The program there was fantastic. I had come, like I said, from a ballet background, and but I had stopped doing that and was still. I knew I wanted to dance, but at Oberlin, I really found kind of more contemporary dance, and improvisation, and it set me down a whole new path. Um, of study in dance and performance that I loved. It was really fun.
That's amazing. And talk about how does the road from dance turn into animation? What kind of got you to Pixar in the first place? I mean, you were there when they were at their very second film. I mean, they've been around for a long time, but you've been there from the second film on that we'll talk about. But what brought you to animation?
Well, it's funny. It was kind of happenstance, really. So in 1996, I moved to the Bay Area. Had been in Denver, Colorado. I moved to the Bay Area, and my roommate knew I was just looking for a job. I had been like waiting tables. I was still dancing and, doing all the things you do to
The
like make.
artistic life, right?
Yes, exactly. And I had done some film production work as, in my odd jobs career. And so someone was like, "Oh, I have a friend who works at Pixar and they're looking for a production assistant." And I didn't even know really. I had seen Toy Story. I honestly was like, "Pixar, what's that?" And
Right.
so it was a temp job for 3 months, and I was I actually quit the job that I had at the time to take it. And I remember my mom was like really worried about that decision. And I was like, "No, mom, I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make this work." And so that parlayed into the temp 3 month job, parlayed into a full time hire, but still as a production assistant. So, and I was working on, many people will not know what this is, but it was a CD-ROM project for Toy
Wow.
Story. It was the Toy Story CD-ROM project. And so I was working on that for about a year. And in doing that and in being suddenly surrounded by animation, I was like, oh my gosh, like animation makes so much sense to me. It's movement, it's choreography, it's timing, it's acting. It's like all these things that I had studied. I had just never thought about it in terms of animation. And so I feel like once that all clicked in, I was like, and I can finally have a job in the arts where I can like make a living and create at the same time. So it was like, I found my place. So I
I
just,
love
yeah, I just started staying late and studying both the principles of animation and our software, learning the software. And I put together a reel that Pete Doctor looked at, and it was a beta tape, which also most of our, audience may
most us
not.
of a certain age. Yeah, I hear
Yes,
you.
yes, yes. And I'm like, thank God, because now no one can look at it ever again. Um, and they hired me. Then I shifted from being sort of like in the production management side over, and I was the first fix animator they ever had, and that was on A Bug's Life, and that was 26
We're going to
years
talk about that. It's
ago.
amazing. You've been on some amazing projects. Like I said, over 20 roles that everyone has heard of. Talk about at the time, though. I mean, Pixar started out as part of, I think, George Lucas's company, right? It was more of
Hmm.
a, and then it was bought by Disney. But like I said, it didn't come to really start doing animation films and doing its own projects until late, I think it was late 80s or something, or late 90s. And so you're on the second project. What was the team like back then? Was there many women on it? What did the team look like since you're all first starting out?
Yeah. So when I was hired, I mean, I won't have this exactly right, but there were roughly, say, 250 people in the company, right? So it was very small, first of all. Um, it grew quite a bit for A Bug's Life in order to between Toy Story, when I came on right after Toy Story, and then in that following sort of year when they were starting A Bug's Life, the team started to grow. The whole company started to grow, but also the animation team. Um, there were never, it's always been a mostly male field. Animation has been, there have been amazing female animators and pioneers in animation, but always a smaller percentage. So it'd be hard to say, but there were probably, maybe it was like 5% female or something like
Right.
that. Maybe not quite.
No, I got you.
So,
That makes sense. Well, I told you off air, I kind of want to go out of order because you've done so many great things at Pixar, but I kind of want to build it so I understand it. So I
okay.
want to start with Brave that you worked on, an amazing female centric character. And that's with animation tools. You were a tools lead, and that's where everything starts, right? That's where you start using everything. Talk about what animation tools means and this whole Presto thing you became a part of.
Yeah, so Pixar has their own proprietary software, and but because in a way it's not something that's sold, right? You don't have that competition, and over time it was starting to kind of fall behind. Like it just wasn't keeping up, and so Presto became this whole redo of our animation software, and I mean a complete from the ground up redo, and which is no easy task, right? On any level. So for Brave, I was brought on as what officially then became a tools lead. And basically I helped work with the engineers, because the engineers are brilliant, but they don't necessarily know what the artists and the way we work and what we need. What makes sense to an artist brain and an engineer brain don't always line up. Um, so I worked with them really closely with a team of amazingly talented engineers and designers to help work the designs and figure out the designs of the animation software. And also like sort of put together groups of people to test it and to, make sure that it was working the way it's supposed to be working, and all of that. And at the same time, we were trying to make Brave, and Brave was the first film that used the new software, so that we call Presto. Yeah.
Nice. I love that. And it's still used today in training all the new people you bring aboard, right? Kind of shows how to use it. And you were behind all of that. That's awesome. A part of the team.
Yeah, I was part of the team for sure. Yeah.
Nice. Then I want to go to Monsters Inc., one of my favorite ones, because that one, you're a layout artist. So that's kind of like the first step before you get into the animation, right? Talk about that and working on that project and what a layout artist is.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So yeah, I from Fix, there was a little gap in time. Well, we're making movies much quicker now, between Bugs Life and Monsters Inc. I almost said University, but it's Monsters Inc. And so the layout artist, so they brought me on as a junior animator. They brought me in to sort of help out in layout and to learn layout, which was really helpful. The layout artist is very much are the artists that sort of set the stage. If you were the camera, they're the ones setting up the camera, and they're putting in the characters, and they're sort of defining what the shot is going to look like. And there's like rough blocking in there, so like a character, and then that's the first. So for every shot that gets set up, layout artists set up and do all of that work, and
Right.
then that's what gets handed on to animation, and that's where we come in. So it's yeah, it's an amazing job, and you get to learn a lot about like camera and iFix, and where, all of that. So it was really informative. It was great.
That's fantastic. And then it'll lead me into going back to your very first project, Bugs Life, because then you're a fixed animator, which there wasn't even a such thing before, from what I understand. Talk about what you're actually doing in that, and what's that like for your very first animated project? How was that to work on?
Oh my gosh. I was like beyond excited. To do that. And so in 3D, right? Like you have first of all, there's just mistakes that happen. Like you can have your hand going through a glass, right? Because we're just pretending to be able to hold it. There's nothing actually stopping your hand from going through another object. So the fix animator, because of the production, we have deadlines and all of that. And so often when there's a mistake or something like that, we don't have time for it to go back to the original animator. And so that's where I came in as the fixed animator. So sometimes I was doing, little fixes like that. And sometimes there's creative changes from a director, and the director wants like, a little bit different acting. When they look at the scene as a whole, they might make some choices that are like, I want to kind of change that acting beat a little bit. And so then I would go back in and I would do that. And sometimes at the time, because there was a huge, Bugs Life had a lot of characters. And every once in a while, an animator would just sort of leave off one of the background characters. And I was always happy when that happened, because then I got to animate the background characters. But it was funny because at the time I was also the fix coordinator. So that meant I was the person who went into the reviews and I would take all the notes, and then I would go back to my desk and I would do all the notes. And now there's a whole team. There's like a fix coordinator, there's a fix lead, and then there's a whole fix team. So I was a one-man band though back on a Bugs Life.
I love that. And talk about, what is the actual art background for an animator? Do you have to have been drawing all your life? Do you have to know how to work with computers well? Is it just kind of, what's the background behind an animator like?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people who've been in the industry for a while came from really different backgrounds, because it wasn't as renowned of a field as it is now. And when it's 2D, it's a little bit less accessible in terms of like, you really do have to have like a high level of draftsmanship. Whereas like I wouldn't consider myself like a strong 2D animator because of that. Whereas I am, very proficient as a 3D animator, because the computer, and it's not that it's like, it's actually the physical draftsmanship, right? The final line quality versus like the acting or the, anything else about it. So I feel like the computer has made animation a little more accessible in that way. I would say today, it's, most animators are going to art school or are studying animation in order to, to get a job in that field, because it's become so competitive. But you really can get into it still. And when you need to probably plan on going to art school and really studying animation, but I feel like you can come from many different backgrounds and still find your way there.
Especially these kids today learn everything on the computer off YouTube in 10 seconds, it seems like. It's amazing what you can learn from these things. That's funny. Well, let's go into voice acting a bit too. I've never heard about the scratch. I guess that's kind of like you're starting off kind of just giving a placeholder, I guess you might call it, but let everyone know what the scratch is and what brought you into voice acting, because I may have heard you just a few dozen times here.
Yeah. That also started on Monsters Inc., ironically, the first time, because what it is basically, the scratch is the temporary dialogue. So they're putting the reels, they put all the storyboards together, and it's like, it's almost like comic strip form, but they're reels. So you're watching the movie, but it's just in storyboard form. And they get people from Pixar to do all the temporary voices before they get the real actors, because often it's just the timing of it, and they're still finding, maybe they don't even know who they want yet as the actor, and that can take more time, and they want to really be able to see the movie and see how it's playing. So they on Monsters Inc. they had asked me to come do some scratch, and they ended up keeping it. So those are that was my first dive. I had never heard of scratch either, and had never thought of a voiceover career. And then the biggest, probably the voice that I'm most recognized for was on Incredibles. I was Kari, the babysitter, and that was really fun. They actually auditioned a whole bunch of 16 or 12-year-olds and teenage girls. They auditioned a whole range of girls, and they still came back and landed on me. I guess my adult voice was still sounded more teenage like than the teenagers. So
I love that. That is so cool. And talk about, I mean, Pixar just seems like, I guess most studios though have a very team. You have such talent from everything within. Talk about working with all these people, and you have like the cooperative I heard of, where you kind of get to combine your talents and work together and use that for other projects. Talk about that for a second.
sure. Well, that's how I ended up making both Through the Windows and Pete, the animated short that's going around now. So the Pixar Cooperative is exactly that, and basically they just allow you. If you have a creative idea for a film, and you have to, sort of run it past them and get permission to make it, but then they offer the resources, as long as, which is basically like utilizing the software there, and technology at Pixar, but also the people, and it's all in kind. So as long as you can get, you create your own team, you ask people and you're like, hey, you want to volunteer after hours, after your very short work day where you don't do much at all in your low pressure job, you want to volunteer and do another project. But it was amazing experience both times, being able to direct those two projects. And it's amazing what you learn, being able to do that.
I just can't imagine the talent you have to draw from, and that's just exciting stuff. Like I said, I don't know where people find the time, but just to be able to get that kind of a name, and I don't even want to go into budgets about these things would cost. It probably costs $1 jillion to hire these people on, and just the technology itself. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's an incredible opportunity. It was funny. So my wife and I directed the documentary together, and then for Pete, we worked together again. And it was funny because at first I thought the cooperative was only for animated films, and it was when I found out it was for any film that we started the documentary. I was like, oh, we have to make this. So we did.
Well, let's start on the documentary. Amazing story that I didn't even know about. It's called Through the Windows, basically about the very first gay bar that actually let people see in, right? And that was in San Francisco. Talk about, how did you hear this story, and what made you and your wife want to bring this to life?
So, Pete, my wife, is a school teacher, and she would take the bus to work, and coming home, the bus basically dropped her off right outside Twin Peaks Tavern, which is the bar. And so, and it's our local pub. It's like our local watering hole. We live around the corner from it. So Twin Peaks Tavern is one of those pubs where you share tables and you talk to strangers and people you may not know, and you start to get to know the patrons there. And in getting to know the patrons there, it is mostly at this point, an older gay men's hangout. There's a lot more mixed depending on the night, but we realized that a couple of our friends passed away, and we realized that in their passing, because there isn't always cross-generational knowledge shared within the gay community, that these stories were dying with these men. And that was breaking our hearts We felt like there are so many stories to be told and to be saved, and kept alive. And so we really wanted to do that and to weave together the story, not only of the patrons who've been going to this bar for now 40 plus years, which is incredible in and of itself, but also the bar itself, because it's a historic spot and it was groundbreaking in its day, and it still serves as a gay meeting place for more generations now. So
It's an amazing documentary. Let's go ahead and play the trailer for it and let our listeners kind of catch up with us, and we'll talk a little bit about more on the other side, okay?
Okay.
All right, guys, this is Through the Windows, co-directed by my very special guest today, Bret Parker. We'll talk about it on the other side. Enjoy the clip. All right.
Each story long untold, 'cause no one stopped to hear it, starting to unfold when we no longer fear it.
I'm a boy and I like Harleys, and I'm a gay person, I like egg cups. So.
In the 70s in San Francisco, it was a blast.
That's it. It was fun.
It was like being a kid in a toy store.
Now here we are together, standing 100 strong.
You could just walk down the street and find your little number for the night.
Well, I never had to have the little talk with my parents because my dad came home and I was having sex with someone.
We all play
You know, it's kind of like that song comes to mind of If That's All There Is, and let's break out the booze and have a ball. Well, I did.
Growing up in my house, killing people with an axe was really not very nice, but there was one thing worse. And I was it.
Until my last breath, I hope to die on that stool over there and be dragged out.
Yeah.
to those who opened windows and helped us feel accepted. We'll make sure they don't close. We will not forget it, 'cause the past becomes.
I think one of the things that Twin Peaks has done is to help normalize gay. What I said earlier about it not being a trendy bar or trying to leather or any, it opened up. One of the reasons they had all this glass was to be open to the world. You know, we're gay and we're not that much different than anybody else. We're just gay.
All right, that was Through the Windows, the first gay bar in the country that we know of to open their windows to the public to kind of see it and see a slice of gay life. Co-directed by my special guest today, Bret Parker, and her wife, Pete. Bret, like I said, I love this. The people are so real, so raw. I love that pick. Talk about these interviews. You did quite a few of them, right?
Yeah, we did. I think we ended up with 13 people, maybe about that we interviewed. The current owners of the bar, and then, a handful of the patrons who have become our close friends. If we weren't friends with them before, we are definitely now.
Nice. I like that. Well, it's like you said before we saw the film. I think gay history is such an oral project because there's not a lot written down. A lot of things went away and disappeared with AIDS. A lot of our big creative people we lost back then. And so it's something I try to push all the time here on my show, and my advocacy is just to let us know you got to know where you've been to know where you're going, right? So
Yeah.
I love projects like these.
Well, thanks. And it was fascinating because I was shocked at how many people came up to us afterwards and some younger animators who saw the film and were like, we grew up in San Francisco and we never knew it was illegal to be gay. And, or like friends that are in the LGBTQ community who felt so validated by seeing the film because, like, to their point, they're like, we don't have gay grandparents who are, sharing this world and this history with us. And it felt like they always feel like they're reinventing the wheel. It's like, no, you're standing on shoulders and in a community who's been there. And there's so much to share and so much knowledge to pass down. So we really hope that Through the Windows does just a little bit of that.
Well said. Well, I was excited to see the trailer. I'm looking forward to seeing the entire film, but absolutely amazing work by you and your wife. And then we talk about the cooperative. I saw that you had Ann Wolitsky, I don't know how you start name, Ann Wolitsky, who helped you edit it, and then
Yes.
Jake Monaco, who I'm now following on Instagram, that you have to get on my show, composing it. That's some amazing work. They started with you there and it kind of went through to Pete. Talk about finding these great people to work on these projects with you.
Well, they're both incredibly talented individuals. Anna and I have known each other for a long time because we're colleagues. And the minute I broached her with Through the Windows, the minute I thought of her, the minute we knew we wanted to make the documentary. And she was hesitant at first because she had never edited a doc. And I was like, but you know what you're doing. I'm like, it transfers over. So and it did.
Right.
So, and then Jake Monaco is a great story because I was actually introduced to him. He did the music for the short Piper, which you have probably heard of,
Yes.
directed by my good friend Alan Barilaro. And Jake had come to visit Alan at Pixar, and Alan knew I was looking for a composer, and so he introduced us. And the amazing thing, Jake had donated all of his time on this, which is just incredible. We had the opportunity to score at Capitol down in LA with 11 musicians of all amazing talent, and both his talent and generosity was just amazing. So, and then they followed me onto Pete, both of them. So that was incredible.
That's fantastic. Well, I kind of saw, I looked at all the people that worked on both things and kind of followed all the ones on Instagram I liked. And Jake was definitely one of them. He looks like he's a fantastic family and so nice to do that. And that's got to be an experience in and of itself. I used to work for Capitol Records, just going down to those recording studios where Tina Turner and the Motels and all those people did. It's like, how wild is that? That had to be an experience.
Oh my God. It was like, it didn't feel, I kept pinching myself. Like we're in this like incredible booth where all this history and talent, and we're watching like all the musicians. I mean, it was mind blowing. It was a mind blowing experience.
I can imagine. Like I said, I worked there for a short time. I only worked there for about a year and a half, but just going to there and knowing that Bowie had been through there and Tina, and they owned all the Beatles catalog through Apple. So they own so many great things. And I said the story before in the show, but as an employee there twice a year, they would fill the two bottom recording studios with albums and let you buy all the albums you want for $1 a piece. They'd put a little hole in the corner of it so you couldn't resell them for like collectors or anything. But the music available is just amazing from their catalog. EMI, Apple, Capitol, amazing.
Wow.
Just some great stuff. But good on Jake. And like I said, the music on both these, let's talk about the music and go into Pete, because I think Pete is such a fantastic animator. What made you decide to go now an animated route with this story? It's your wife's story. We find out kind of at the end there. But talk about the difference between doing live action and documentaries. It's a little different than a film, but it's talk about the difference going live action to animation. What made that decision come about?
Well, so Pete is based on the true story of it's a moment that happened in my wife's life as a kid. And so that was it's set in 1975. So for a couple reasons. One is, as a memory, there was something like that really drew me to the look of the film, ink and watercolor. It felt like the Winnie the Pooh illustrations, which we grew up with. And I was just drawn to that, and kind of, it felt like it really married well with the story and the period. And then in terms of animation also, we felt like animation, it's a gender identity tale. And so it feels like animation is often more accessible for people when you're talking about issues that can have political tension or, a touchy subject. And so it felt like animation was a way to sort of maybe bridge that and make it a little more accessible.
Right. And you talk about the amazing color palette you chose, which I agree. Let's go ahead and show the trailer to Pete, and then we'll talk about it more on the other side as well, okay?
Great.
All right, guys, this is Pete. We are talking with the director of her wife's story, a little chunk of her wife's story here, Bret Parker. We're talking about it on the other side. We'll enjoy the clip.
Hi, I'm Pete.
Heads up!
It was summertime, 1975, Winter Park, Florida. The best time of the year. We played all the baseball we wanted, rode BMX bikes, built forts in the muck, and stayed out till sundown. It was a great time to be a kid.
Unbelievable. That's terrible. It is that anyway.
Or was it? I guess what I hadn't known was that the world outside my cul-de-sac wasn't ready for me to be Pete yet. But I didn't know how to be anything else.
All righty, guys, we are back. That was the trailer for Pete, an amazing animated short film, won all these awards all across the country, debuted at Tribeca Film Festival last year, but now it's up, fingers crossed, for an Oscar, we're hoping. How exciting is that? Great job on this. Wow. How delicate do you have to be directing your wife's story? That's got to be interesting.
It's amazing. It was really fun the whole time. We had a great time working together. It's awesome when you have the subject, you get to really drill down, because often it's her original story and then I sort of wrote the screenplay for it. But whenever we had a question, I would be like, but what were you feeling here? And so we got to go really deeper within each moment of it, really trying to understand. It was funny though, because when I was directing, she narrates it. It's her voice narrating it. And when I was directing her and we were recording her voice, she kept crying and she would stop talking. She would start to cry. And I would be like, it's okay, baby. It's okay. You got this. And then we'd start again. And then she'd start crying and she'd stop talking. And finally I was like, if you just finish the sentence, it's okay. I can make it work. But if the words don't come out of your mouth, I got nothing.
Oh, no, that's so cool how emotional it was for. I love that.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah.
Now, talk about the process, this being your second project, the first one being live action. So you're kind of doing everything ahead of time, right? You got to film all these things and then you're doing the edit. For animation, it seems like it's the opposite. You kind of do the story stuff outside and you're actually creating the final work on the animation part. What was the differences between the two? Did you enjoy it? Did you learn something new on the documentary side? Talk about the two different processes.
Yeah, well, it was super eye-opening on the doc, because I'm used to animation where you always can change the camera or make this a little better. And with the doc, you're like, oh, wait, this is what I have. If I want to make it better, I have to reshoot the whole thing. So, we quickly learned in making the documentary, okay, make sure that really everything is set up perfectly from the get-go and you ask all the questions. I think there was only one interview. We ended up we didn't like throw out the first interview, but we definitely added on to it. And so we did a second interview for a couple of them, because I was like, oh, wait a minute. But
Right.
yeah, animation is really different because you do have that. And, you know, with this, I talked about the ink and watercolor look, but that was one of the hardest things to kind of try to find. And we were finding it up until the last second, and really adding literally until the like 11th hour, we were adding more stuff into the look and adjusting and tweaking and re-rendering and trying to get it exactly how we wanted it.
Absolutely amazing work. Like I said, the whole thing I think is only about 6 minutes long or so. So we're gonna send everyone so we can watch the entire film. And just the story is such a great slice of life. It's very topical, and then it has a happy ending, which I always love a happy ending. But I can understand her emotion, not only living through it, but kind of having to see things that we're repeating now too. That's got to be a little weird, right?
Yeah, you know, when we started the project, the issues of transgender and LGBTQ plus issue, like what's happening in politics in the United States, were not such a hot topic, because we started like a kind of fall of 2019, I'd say. And then as we were making the film, you know, it became such a issue now, in the United States in particular. So it has been, it's something where she's felt very vulnerable. You know, it's a very vulnerable place to be when you're sharing your personal story to an audience, and you never know what to expect, really.
No, I bet. Well said. Talk about in general, let's go back to the industry in general, because I just want people to go see this film. It's just an amazing film. Watch both films, but talk about the industry in general again. From your time now, 26 years plus in animation, there was competing, before Disney bought you, we had Disney animation compared to Pixar. You have a lot of people, Warner Brothers and their cartoons. Is it collaborative outside? You have such a collaborative workforce inside Pixar where you're working together. Do you find it easy to talk to other people outside the communities, a kind of a close-knit community? Or is everyone kind of so busy and with such painstaking long work that you're kind of in your own little realms?
Well, a little of both, kind of. Like, it is such a close community, and one of the amazing things we've found, but you are working. So, like, I would say, like, within, you know, within the Pixar community, I maybe don't know as many animators who are at Warner Brothers or, you know, DreamWorks, but depending on people's paths, there's a lot of crossover there. And then one of the great experiences we've had is being able to go to some of these film festivals. Like we were at Annecy, which is an amazing animation film festival in France.
Right.
And everyone's so supportive of each other's work. I just feel like the animators understand the work and the craft that goes into making any animated film, whatever it is, and how much time it takes to create these things. And so I find the animation community in general just to be really supportive of each other.
That's amazing. And talk about, how are you inspired to bring fresh creativity to each project? Because animation kind of can take a long time, right? I don't know if it's quicker now with all the leaps and bounds of technical expertise we've had, but how do you keep yourself excited about the next project? How does it not become routine for you?
Well, with the projects, I feel like when I do projects outside of work, it sort of feeds my creative energy, and helps inspire me with projects at work and vice versa. So I feel like that sort of keeps that creative spark going. And then the fun part about animation is, even though you're doing technically maybe the same thing, but each film is a really different subject matter, and you have to learn it. Like, Brave, we literally went horseback riding and had to learn horse mechanics, right? In order to animate a horse or to shoot a bow and arrow. I didn't know how to shoot a bow and arrow. So, on Ratatouille, we got to take cooking classes and learn how to properly hold a knife. And, so in order to animate it properly, we get to learn and study these things. And so it's really fun because then every project you're learning something different, or it's a different animation style. It's more cartoony, or it's more anime based, or, whatever it is. I feel like you're learning something new every time.
That is amazing. Well, Bret Parker, we got to wrap this up in a second. I'm sure everyone's wanting to know now how they can get in animation. We talked a little bit about it in the beginning. I mean, there's still great schools like Full Sail, I know, does a lot of gaming animation and different kind of things like that. What's your best recommendations these days to get it? Just practice, and send out resumes, or what do you recommend these days?
I think these days, honestly, trying to go to school like a Cal Arts or Ringling, Full Sail, depending on the style of anime. I mean, like if you want to do feature or gaming, there are different schools that might focus a little differently. Also, there's amazing online programs. Animation Mentor is one that, if you are working full time and you don't have the time and maybe money to go back to school full time, that's another path in. So there's a lot of opportunity. I think that it is great to these days kind of to go to school on some level and really learn the craft.
Nice. And of course, working in this industry, as long as I've been doing these interviews, we know that you can't talk about anything until it comes out. But is there anything you can sneak talk about, maybe what's in your life there, where you're in your wife's production company, or anything you can sneak on Pixar at all?
No sneak on Pixar, but my wife and I are writing, in the stages of writing a feature that based off of the Pete story, the Pete short. So more to come there.
Fantastic. And is that going to be still animation, or are you going to bring it full to real life?
Currently, the plan is animation.
Nice. I love it. Well, Bret Parker, it's been an absolute pleasure getting to know you and your craft. Thank you for sharing so much with it. These guys have to see Through the Windows and Pete for sure. Let them know, give them the web address for your production company, because some great links to that, and where they can follow you on social media.
Oh, that's great. Yes. The production company is Art Farm Productions. You can find us at artfarmproductions.com. Pete the Film we have Instagram, we have Facebook, we have a website at www.petethefilm.com. And Through the Windows, we will be getting, and Pete's up for a limited time on YouTube also. And Through the Windows is accessible through that website, which is, actually at artfarmproductions.com also. So
fantastic.
Enjoy.
Right. There you go. I love it. Well, stay on the line for me, Bret. Guys, if you're a part of the Academy, look for these films. It's going to be amazing. I want to see Pete up there for amazing short film for the next Academy Awards. Guys, I appreciate your time as always. Thanks for listening to the Left of Str8 Show. We hope to see you next week. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Left of Str8 Show. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast distributor, and please give us a 5-star rating so more listeners can find us. You can follow us on social media, and be sure to check out our website, www.leftofstr8radio.com, for contests and other news and information. See you next week.